Good evening. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It is 7:48 p.m. my time, which is Friday the 14th of June, and I guess Mountain Time. Yeah, Mountain Time. Well, that about wraps up the middle section of The Devil in Us. And I don't think I'm going to do any podcasts on the opening or the ending of the book. It's better that they're read. The middle part made for pretty good podcasting because it's all about what's gone on in the last four generations. And so that's really what the story is about at a social, economic, political, and spiritual level. And the opening three chapters, which are my childhood, and the closing three chapters, which are the life and perspective I've created up here, and a little bit more about my life and my spiritual evolution. It's better to read them. I can't really podcast about them, and they're better just read. So this will be the last podcast on The Devil and Us. And then I think I'm going to do Stardust Ranch, and I'm going to go through the whole book chapter by chapter. And I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff that didn't make it into the book, chapter by chapter, because there's only so much you could tell. And I was worried about like people not believing the book because it was so outrageous, the stuff John and Joyce were telling me, his wife. It's just so outrageous. So I had to act as a kind of an editor and bring it all into focus and tell the story, which is what I did. But tonight I'm going to do a podcast that I think I'm tentatively going to title Sympathy for the Devil, which is the Rolling Stones song. And help you understand that when you look at the world in a binary way, you're going to make errors, okay? Because when you get enough perspective and enough consciousness on what's going on, the binary goes away. And this isn't what I would call the phony non-duality of Suzanne non-duality and these other non-duality podcasters, but it's I wouldn't even call it non-duality. I would call it just the realization. Okay, you could call it a kind of an enlightenment or the beginning of enlightenment, but it's the beginning of what I call the realization. And the realization is a number of things, all operating in one thing, the realization. Number one is it's a hologram down here. Now you can hear 1,000,001 people say that. You can hear some physicists say it's a simulation. You can hear people who've had near-death experiences say it's a simulation. You can hear people from the Monroe Institute, graduates of that audio phenomenon he has to sync up the left and the right brain, tell you it's a simulation, it's an illusion. You can hear the remote viewers tell you this. You can hear Elon Musk give his opinion on it, and he definitely believes it's a simulation. But like the word source, I don't like the word simulation because it creates a victim out of us, like an experiment is being done on us, and I don't think that's the case. I think the particular frequency of the hologram we're living in, and the 3D is one frequency in the overall hologram. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that is real is God. And everything else is just a soul playing a role in the cosmology, either in the physical, the astral, the causal, or the mental planes. It could be a god, it could be an angel, it could be a demon, it could be an extraterrestrial, but it's all just the same thing. We're all just playing these different roles and trying to get this 360-degree perspective on what's going on. And the hologram is not a simulation, it's a functioning operating system in which consciousness is a co creator in the outcome and timeline. Okay? This is why I get upset with the people who um, come to a small consciousness, a small awareness of what consciousness can do, and immediately try to game it toward the ego. What can you manifest? What can you get in your life? And now I understand those things are important, especially when you're young. You want to draw the person you love into your life. You want them to love you. Um, all of these sorts of things. But you want and to do that, very often we believe we need a certain material standing, which we try to materialize because that attracts the mate from the male perspective. Okay, having the stuff, having the success, that's what attracts the women. Physical appearance is really irrelevant for women beyond high school. Okay, and that's if you're a young guy and you're listening to me, understand what I'm telling you. They really don't care. Okay, and men who get into the beauty game and try to compete with women and be beautiful men, I think that's just closet or unacknowledged homosexuality, to be honest. Man is a man, right? We have to be told when to wash. We have to, you know, everything is functional and practical. We get haircuts that require minimum maintenance, not to accentuate our beauty, unless you're gay, and then you're in the Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper crowd, you know, looking at your clothes and everything. I get all my clothes over here at a secondhand store down in town, like $3 shirts, and you need long sleeve shirts to go into the jungle. There's just so many things that will go at you if you have exposed skin. So, but alas, I'm getting off track again, which I want to do in my narrative walkabouts. We're talking about sympathy for the devil. Now, I have a lot of really powerful, awakened, and capable spiritual friends, largely as a result of writing the books. But I know a lot of like top tier clairvoyants. There's clairvoyant and then there's clairvoyant. Um, I know a lot of, I would say, reformed Satanists. I have a certain appeal for those people. And generally, because they've already opened up spiritually and they cannot deny what they experienced in their negative pursuits, what happens when they transition out is they carry over the responsibility of evolution over to the light. And that's actually a very positive thing. People on the light side should experience the darkness. Don't hurt anybody, don't use the darkness, but experience it, because you're not balanced if you don't, okay? And people on the dark side should experience the light. It's just the way it works, because the binary is ridiculous. Binary is the process by which we come to the realization, and the realization is it's non-binary, okay? But the binary persists. I know. I sound like a fortune cookie. It's hard to put language around these things, but nonetheless, here we are. Now, a lot of my spiritual friends, they they don't have difficulty with the books I write, but they say, like, Bruce, why do you focus on this stuff? And my answer is simple: because these things have to be explained to people. There's still hundreds of millions of people caught up in the spider web of the Abrahamic system. Hundreds of millions, if not over a billion. On culturally, there's over 3 billion, but I would say maybe 1 in 3 is really practicing, and that's accounting for the 80 or 90% of the 1.5 billion Muslims who are practicing, who are doing their prayers 5 times a day, who are doing the Ramadan fast and all of these things. And it's important that this information get out, and part of my responsibility as I've had it revealed to me in this incarnation is to document these things and to decrypt mythology. In the past, being a mythologist and telling myths was the job of a storyteller or somebody who worked in the narrative art. In our time, it's the opposite. It's taking all the myths and breaking them down into literals. Okay, this is what it means literally. And there's a lot of people doing that now. There's an ex-pastor, if you can believe that. I think he's Australian or British. I forget his name. He's doing a YouTube channel now called The Fifth Kind. And fifth is 5th, not FIFTH. Fifth Kind. Look it up. He's got a couple million subscribers. And he interviewed several times, interviewed Biglio, the Vatican translator, who came to the conclusion that it was all extraterrestrial. Okay, look him up as well. Why did I bring him up? Well, it's just another example of the work that's going on in this field. And a lot of people are going to find tremendous difficulty with it. And to add complexity to the situation, the Christ is still working with people. But if you're a Christian and you have a working relationship, a spiritual relationship with the Christ, ask him how much stock you should put in the scriptures. Ask him. See what he says. Okay? I'll tell you what, if you really have a relationship with the Christ, I'll tell you what he's going to say. He's going to say not much at all. Use them for a little bit of inspiration here and there. If you need something inspirational out of the Gospels or out of the Psalms or whatever. But don't rely on them as a crutch. Your spiritual life should really be your own. It should eventually be weaned off of all external support systems, all crutches. You shouldn't need a single book to rely on. You shouldn't need a single living or dead master to rely on. You shouldn't need prophets, so on and so forth. Ultimately, you stand on your own as an individuated being. So my friends, they say to me, Bruce, why, these books are so intense and so dark, and why do you do them? And I said, well, first of all, I can't. And it has to do a lot with, the first part of the book, the first 3 chapters, my upbringing, and how I was sort of inoculated to real darkness and spiritual darkness because my father was possessed his whole life. I don't think the last conversation I had with my father before he went into the hospital and never came out, he had COPD from years of smoking filterless cigarettes. I said to him, and my inner voice said, you got to have the conversation with him. And I had it. And I said, Dad, look, you need to understand that not all the voices in your head through your life have been yours. And it's not your fault. They were passed on to you from Grandpa, your father. And this is the way it goes. And he was very emotional in his reception of it. And he said, yeah. And he could hardly speak, right? Because COPD robs your oxygen. And he could hardly speak, and he was like, yeah. And he said, thank you. You made my day. And 2-3 days later, he went into the hospital, and then he died 3 weeks later. It just got progressively worse. So, I was raised in this darkness, and I can spot it a mile away, people who are possessed. And possession is not what people think it is. Not at all. It's been completely corrupted by the Christians, because they're idiots. No offense, but they're just Fucking idiots, okay? They get everything wrong. They're drama queens about everything, and, it's just not the way things work. And they accentuate this battle of good versus evil, right? Because that's where their basket is. That's where their collection basket is. That's what their role is in life. That's where they make their money, right? I don't mean to be crass about this, but it's just where they make their money, you know? Let's take a look at something here.
Franciscan priest who had been an exorcist for 25 years. And then he permitted me to sit in on 40 exorcisms that he performed during the time that I was there. And then that allowed me to learn firsthand the ministry of the church for those who were up against the forces of evil and were seeking help.
What was the most extreme one you witnessed out of the 40? Because, of course, you get that question all the time.
There are a few that stand out. Obviously the very first one, I'm talking with an elderly lady and her husband, and she's explaining to me why she believes that she's possessed. And, the three of us are in the room where we're having a conversation, and I'm watching Father Carmine, the priest who trained me, and he walks into the room and he puts a roll of paper towels on the table, and he walks back out, and he comes back in and ties a plastic grocery bag onto the wall radiator. He walks back out again, and he comes in, and this time he has a purple stole, which is a piece of purple cloth that a priest will drape around his neck as a sign of his priestly office. He has the rite of exorcism in his hand, and he immediately takes holy water and he blesses this little elderly lady. As soon as the drops of water hit her, the demon manifested. Her eyes rolled in the back of her head. She began foaming at the mouth, growling and snarling, and throwing out all kinds of blasphemies.
Such as?
She was insulting God.
Oh, okay.
She was insulting me and Father Carmine and just about anyone. Basically doing anything as a way to disrupt this particular prayer of the church.
And then you said, so you've seen many. So that was the first one you saw. Was there anything that was more extreme than her?
Absolutely. The one that really stands out the most was during an exorcism when the demon manifested and the person's body began to levitate.
You saw somebody's body levitate?
I saw a person levitate during an exorcism.
How much was the levitation?
The person rose about a foot out of the chair they were in, because I'm looking at this in disbelief, and Father Carmine is praying the rite of the church, the prayers, and he's glancing over and looking, and he looks back at his book, he looks back at the person, he looks back at his book, then he takes his hand, puts it on the head of the person, and pushes him back down into the chair without ever pausing for even one moment in the prayer.
Was any of that caught on camera?
The church does not videotape. Oftentimes, people,
how convenient, Father.
But let me ask this question.
But the reason the church does that is to protect the identity of the individual.
So obviously at this point, Adam believes in this stuff a lot.
I am very skeptical,
Yes.
just to put it out there. And I'd like to see what the audience has.
But the mixture of who we have today is perfect, of where I think it's healthy to be skeptical. So, if I go to a David Copperfield show and I kind of see, what the works he's doing, I look up, I see the strings. I'm like, that's pretty cool how they're doing it. But in this setting, when that happened, how many people were in the room when you saw this?
It was me, another priest, Father Carmine, the individual, and a family member that was with him.
So five of you.
5 of us.
So it's not. So here's the part. Let's play a skeptic, but let's also play. Why would he say this? So when you look at him, he doesn't look like like I watch his interviews. There is what is like yesterday. The biggest thing was what's the motive? Like when I watch Bob Larson, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how you feel about Bob Larson. You look like you have some opinions on Bob Larson, or no?
We all do.
Okay, so I'd be curious to get your feedback on Bob Larson. And
Bob Larson is who exactly? He's a famous exorcist.
Do you know who Bob Larson
with the daughters? Is that him?
Yeah. Bob Larson's the guy with the daughters. This is Bob Larson. So
yeah, I've seen him.
A guy like him is why nobody would believe in exorcism. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is the part where it's the flamboyant, the showmanship, the all this stuff that I have a hard time. What's your opinion on Bob Larson before I even go further?
Well, rather than being critical of someone else, I would tend to want to be more positive about what I believe exorcism is, because we talked about skepticism, An exorcist is trained to be a skeptic. I should be the very last person in the room to believe that somebody is truly dealing with extraordinary demonic activity. Every other possible explanation needs to be exhausted. And that's the approach the Catholic Church takes. That's why even in the United States, we have a protocol that we follow. And step number 1 of the protocol is for the person to have a psychiatric evaluation. Step 2 is to have a physical examination, because the church wants experts in the mental health field and in the medical sciences to weigh in on what is happening or what this person believes is happening in their life. I will say, because I am publicly known as an exorcist, I receive the high volume of people who reach out to me, but the majority of the people who reach out to me have already self-diagnosed. And any exorcist will tell you that when somebody has self-diagnosed, 99% of the time, it's not something demonic.
99% of the time, it's not something that it's more like DID, or it's something else that.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
When someone self-diagnoses, meaning they think that they're possessed by a demon, 99% of the time, it's not accurate.
Correct.
Okay.
So they're calling me and saying, I'm possessed and I need an
Right.
exorcism. And my response would be, no, you're not. We may get to that point,
Yeah.
but we
We're
have to
not there
look
yet.
at
What is actually wrong with them at that point? They're schizophrenic, they're bipolar, they're on drugs, they're depression. What's the
It could be all of those, and that's
Okay.
why it has to be investigated, because I would be the first one to say the church would do greater harm to someone if she labels that person as being possessed, and that label prevents the person from getting the true help that they need. So there may be other people that are exorcists that may be too quick to believe that somebody is possessed. But again, I think that would do greater harm if it prevents them from going and getting help from the psychiatrist or their family doctor. Because the overriding goal should be to get help for the person who is suffering, whether that be due to spiritual, physical, or mental problems that they're having in their life.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire
So there you go. That's one of the more prominent, what would you call it? One of the more prominent exorcists out there these days. And the Catholics are making a really good showing there. Patrick Bet David's sidekick there, who was the skeptic, is Adam Levine, and he's Jewish. And of course, the Jews have a very different perspective on all of this. So I hope that should need no real explanation, you know. Generally, in their theology, the Jews have learned how to deal with this stuff very, very effectively at the rabbinical level. They don't share it, though. Okay, so Jewish theology is for Jews. It's you know, again, here I go back into the binary. I was going to sort of lead out of that today. But look, demons are real. Okay, they're I had one up on the mountain for 4 months, and it didn't manifest till I cut the person off of their marijuana. And then its manifestation is quite something. The more sensitive you are, the more aware you're going to be. And then after time, you learn to put everything together. I'm a real I'm like a homicide detective in putting these things together now. So after I told this person, because their demon could have been expunged quite easily, and their demon was put into them in the government programs, in the super soldier programs, okay? There's another thing, okay? So demonology was extensively used in the super soldier programs. These super soldier programs came out of the research that the Nazis started. I didn't put this in the 1947 chapter. Like, you know, when I go over Stardust Ranch, you'll see that there's like 5 times more than is in the books. I as the writer have to exercise my discretion and determine what is useful for my story and what if I oversaturate the book with examples and all of these sorts of things, it ends up just becoming a compendium of information, like an encyclopedia. And I don't write encyclopedias. I do when I'm being paid to do that as a technical writer or a documentation specialist. But when I'm writing a book, I want to tell a story. I want it to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I want it to have subtexts, aspects of the book that are speaking to the unconscious indirectly and directly, all these sorts of things. But I will spend a moment on this now because I kind of just cracked it open, okay? So, if demons are these terrifying things, as that Catholic priest wants us to believe, and they are pretty freaky. You know, they're like, you never quite get used to being around them. You know, as I was around them when I wrote The Devil in Us. And they were very, very, let's say, gentle with me because I was performing a service. And, but how is it that the demonic realm could be appropriated to create super soldiers and super psychics for MI6 and Mossad and the CIA? And all of this went on, okay? And you ask yourself this, in all this disclosure that's coming out, why is nobody making the connection between the demonic realm and all of these programs, the remote viewing and all of this stuff? Right? Why is that sacrosanct? Why is that left alone? It's left alone because that is the domain of the Jews. Okay? So, and quite frankly, the Jews scare the shit out of everybody. They just do. Okay, they're very, very proficient with magic and curses and things like this. So it's the ultimate form of thuggery. It's like multidimensional thuggery is what it is. Okay, which explains the idea of the chosen people and you know all of the Jewish exceptionalism we've seen in the last 3 or 4 decades is a byproduct of this thuggery, of stealing ideas and innovation from non-Jews and taking it for themselves. And if you complain about it, you have a heart attack or you commit suicide or something horrible happens to you. And there's nothing in the chain of evidence that would connect these people to it. This is what happens when you can work multidimensionally like this. I'm telling you the truth, folks, of how this world works. And it's the reason I can tell you is it's ending now. It may not seem like it's ending. It may seem like we're in the absolute worst part of it, the end times, the tribulation in the Bible, but it's ending. The tribulation is if we go with the biblical narrative, the tribulation is the beginning of the celebration because the yoke of the evil is being lifted off of our backs. And human beings are now being given the strength to cope with these things. A day will come in the very near future, 1, 2, 3 generations out, where demons will be about as problematic for the human race as black bears or grizzly bears. You know, you wouldn't want to have your camp attacked by one in the middle of the night, but you know, you would just have to deal with it, right? And that's what's going on now. So this level, for a portion of the human race anyways, this level of the binary system, the angelic and demonic, is ending. These lessons are no longer needed, okay? So that's what's going on. But the Catholics are just milking it till the final thing. So remember, demons get assigned to people. They're not looking to invade people. This narrative you're given by the Christians and the Catholic Church is complete horseshit. Okay? I know people who can do exorcisms remotely They don't even need to be in the same room with the possessed person, with the holy water and the Roman ritual and the cross and invoking the name of the Christ. I mean, you just call them up 3,000 kilometers away and say, I have a demonically possessed person here. And they say, give me the name and send me a photo by the internet. You wake up the next day and the person's not possessed anymore. Okay? In fact, they don't advertise this. I know this because I know people who've been contacted by the Vatican. They're outsourcing a lot of their exorcisms now to non-Catholics, to naturally gifted exorcists, people who have the ability to get a demon out of somebody. The people I know who can do the remote exorcisms, they literally go and talk to the demon, and I've had it all explained to me. And it's like, hey, what's the problem here? And the demon tells them, well, I've been assigned to this person for such and such a reason. I can't leave until they realize it. And then the person tells the spirit of the living person, okay, this is the reason you're possessed. The spirit agrees to the terms. The demon leaves, and then the conscious mind apprehends the lesson in the coming weeks. It slowly sifts into the conscious mind through dreams and just sudden epiphanal revelations, and that's how it works. Okay? You don't need this. The power of Christ compels you. The power, it's just not needed. It's part of the drama and pageantry and quite frankly, the sales package of the Vatican, which lest we forget, the Catholic Church is one of the top 5 richest institutions in the world. As all the conspiracy theorists go after people like BlackRock and Larry Fink, for good reason. I'm not saying Larry Fink's a good guy or BlackRock is a good organization, but never forget the Catholic Church is richer than Larry Fink. Okay? And how do they make this money? By scaring people, by lying to people, by inventing an economy for themselves that could be open sourced. It could have been open sourced a century ago. They don't open source it because they like the patent, because the patent generates revenue for them. This is the kind of spirituality we're letting go of now. Okay? The infantilization, the paternalization. Poppy knows best. You know what they call the Pope in the Latin world? Like the Latino world? Poppy. Daddy. Poppy Francis. I was talking to, a number of years ago before he died, I was talking to one of my father-in-law's brothers. He has 10 siblings. And one of his brothers was visiting. And I went over to the house to speak to him. My Spanish wasn't super good back then, but I had been warned. Don't say anything sacrilegious to this guy. He's super religious. So I saunter into the living room. I shake the guy's hand. He's pleased to meet me because I'm a foreigner. I've married one of his nieces and so on and so forth. And then I just let out, I think this Pope's the devil. And man, all the blood goes out of his face. Classic, man. Classic. I was quietly ushered out by my mother-in-law. Ushered out with cake and coffee. Oh, come into the kitchen, Bruce. We have some cake for you. Okay, right? But all the blood went out of his face. Anyways, I got to stay on track. Okay, I'm so ill-disciplined in these podcasts, but I think this is what's enjoyable about them. So I'm not going to be too hard on myself. So one of the things I want to get across to people in my writing, and to be honest, I use a little bit of the old Catholic trick myself, which is fear. Okay? A lot of people get afraid reading my books. I'm not so much afraid, but they're forced to think about things that are disturbing to them. Okay? And this is very Catholic. So culturally, some of that Catholicism is still embedded in me. Okay? And I don't think you can really change who you are. You can grow, you can see things differently, you can escape the binary system and see it from above and then come back down and live in it with more detachment. You can do these things, but if you're born into a Jewish family, until the day you die, there will be aspects of your personality and character that are Jewish. If you're born into a strict Catholic family like I was, there are aspects of your personality and your character that will be Catholic till the day you die. If you're born into a Protestant family, there will be aspects of your character that will be Protestant till the day you die. Buddhism is the same. Hindu. It's all the same, right? And I think one of the utilities of the disturbing stuff is, okay, and I've also said some things very casually, which, I mean, if you've digested them, they're extremely disturbing. Okay? So I'll say one now. Does the human race deserve to be culled at this point? And does the first world deserve to be culled? Yes, it does. Okay? First world people, Americans, Canadians, Australians, Brits, French, like everybody who lives at this level, okay? From after World War II, we were given a level of wealth and a level of entitlement that the rest of the world didn't have. And I guess you could say we earned it. We definitely earned it. Okay, through the work of our ancestors, our grandparents, our parents, well, not so much my parents or the baby boom parents, but through the work of our grandparents and great-grandparents and the evolution of our civilizations, we earned it. But the problem is we didn't do anything good with it. We didn't use the free time we created to do anything good with our lives. And we could have. We could have meditated 2 hours a day for a decade and completely changed our consciousness. We could have been more generous with other people. But what we did was we turned it all into heightened entitlement, heightened sensitivity to the ego and the self. Look at the billions and trillions of dollars spent on the self. Pharmacy, therapy, psychology, psychiatry. And these are economies that didn't exist in the past. And people weren't walking around crippled and broken either. Don't believe the bullshit. That's the sales pitch of the psychiatrists. See, everybody is competing for the same market. You've got the Catholics in there saying that demonic possession is real. You've got the modern Jews saying it's not true. And they're in there selling their pharmacia, and I mean, psychiatry is, as Mother Soprano said in season 1 of The Sopranos, psychiatry? Well, that's just a racket for the Jews. Brilliant line in season 1 of The Sopranos. And she's largely right, despite the bigotry of the statement, okay? Therapy is just mental masturbation. The way to get over all your problems is to sit in silence and to face yourself, okay? That's it. Sit in silence and face yourself. Or surround yourself with good people who don't lie to you, okay? A good friend will tell you the truth, even if it jeopardizes your friendship with them. Okay? How many friends do you have like that? Not many, right? Maybe none? So here's the question. What happened to friendship? If you can't trust your own friends to have your back spiritually and tell you the truth, who can you trust? And how did it get to this point? Well, it got to this point because in the modern world, friendships are formed around commerce, which are about making money, maintaining status and position in society, and so on and so forth. So they're not going to tell you the truth. Okay? Back at the beginning of this cycle, when people lived on farms and they worked and they had integrity, that was the last really good generation, okay? And I don't believe this mud flood horse shit or anything like that. There may be minor instances of that, but I don't believe what this guy on Archaics is saying at all, that there's a 138-year cycle. I think it's a bunch of horse shit, okay? And look, it's impossible to really say what's going on this planet. It's because there's so much we still don't understand, like the portals and all this stuff. Okay? So it's really not possible to say what's going on this planet. So if you can't say what's going on, the question is, well, what's the purpose of a life? Well, the purpose of a life is simply to discover what you are. That you're this thing, you're this unit of perception called a soul. That you have a physical body, you have emotions, you have memories that go back into lives that are not related to this body, and that you are connected to the universal mind, and beyond even that, you're liberated from all of that, and you're energetically independent. You don't need anything. You don't need food, you don't need sleep, you don't need anything. Okay? That's the goal, is to realize that's what you are. Now, we've had 75 years to do this, because we liberated ourselves after World War II from the toils of work. And I mean real work here. I mean going into the fields. I mean cutting abaca. I mean planting crops. I mean tilling the earth. I mean tending to animals. I mean milking cows. I mean tanning hides. Work. Real work. What we call work now is complete horseshit. It's all just ego-based nonsense, okay? I'm a project manager, I'm a business analyst, I'm this, I'm that, and it's all just head games because our economy has moved into a non-physical space through technology, okay? This is why women have entered the marketplace and why they're dominating, because they're much stronger in the non-physical space because they've been existing in that realm since the beginning, where men were much more in the physical space. So that's not prophecy, that's prediction. Okay? And the difference is it's a logical prediction based on a fundamental understanding. The fundamental understanding is that women are much stronger in the internal space. Much stronger in the internal space. And so if we produce an economy based on the internal space, women are going to come to lead. It's natural. Right? But that will have its peak and crumble as well. Because everything we build goes up and comes down. Okay? And there's a question. Why is it that everything we build as human beings fails? Except tribal culture. Okay? I live with a tribe that is at least 10,000 years old. They have their own written and spoken language. At least 10,000 years old. So that goes beyond the pharaohs, beyond Marcus Aurelius, way past 8,000 years past Jesus, and they've been living largely the same way for 10,000 years. Same myths, same culture. The spiritual or the spiritual and psychic force on the reserve is practically physical. The ancestor connection when you walk through the graveyards is bone tingling because it's all real, because it's continuous for 10,000 years. American Empire, basically from 1945 to now. So 80 years, right? 80 years, very short empire. The British Empire before that, 200-300 years, from about the 1700s or the 1600s when they started coming over to North America. Went to India in the 1700s, raped that country, raped them good, boy, I'll tell you. You know, and 200-300 years. Ottoman Empire was how long? That was a long one, actually. So that one might have gone on for 500 or 600 years. Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Prussian Empire, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling. Why? Why can't we build anything that lasts if we're so civilized, we're so smart, and we're better than everybody in this European mindset? Because all of our spiritual foundations are incorrect. Because we're not that smart. We're clever. And there's a difference between smart and clever. So do we deserve to be culled? Yes. Please don't confuse that with me saying you personally deserve to die. You don't, if you're listening to me, you have all the consciousness you need to save yourself. If you're addicted to the system you live in, that's not my problem. That's just another form of addiction, like alcohol, drugs, tobacco, coffee. That's just another form of addiction. If you really loved life, you could leave that which is going to kill you and seek life. You could build an ark, metaphorically. Okay? So that's a whole separate issue. Very, very different issue altogether. So why do we deserve to be culled? Okay? Is Bruce going woke? Is Bruce like one of these morons protesting on college campuses? No, I'm not. But I will point out to you the underlying root cause of why these young people are so angry and so confused and so disoriented. Okay? They haven't been taught any gratitude. Gratitude is what you get after the legitimate rewards of a hard day's work. Okay? Gratitude is what I have when I finish a book, that the Creator allowed me to finish a book. Gratitude is what I have when I speak to a competent reader who echoes back what I intended to project in the book. I feel grateful. I feel like I did real work. I had a real purpose. Farmers have it. Laborers have it because they can look at what they built, right? They built a house. They built an apartment complex. They built this. They built that. Okay? Spiritual gratitude is understanding that every moment we're alive on this planet is a gift of the earth, a gift of the deities that control it, including the devil, because this is the devil's domain. It's a gift, okay? There's a little hint as to why you get possessed, by the way. Ingratitude is one of the factors, okay? So, it's a gift. Every moment you are in a body, you can progress so much spiritually. The body was created for spirits to reconnect with the Creator. It's much harder to do on the other side because there's no friction really on the other side. You understand? And friction is what propels us. Okay? On the other side, it's like the Shire. You know the Shire from the Lord of the Rings? It's sunny, everybody's happy, you got cheese, you got beer, you know, nothing really bad happens. And so you have no motivation to change. You have no motivation to seek out the Creator. Same thing with the extraterrestrials. It's too easy for them. Too easy. All right? In this physical 3D life, this is where you get the motivation through your suffering and through your trials to try to go back to God. And if you get it in your head that you can do it and you practice, I guarantee you, whether you achieve the goal of self-realization or not, you will come to gratitude. And you will understand the importance of gratitude. Okay? We don't anymore in the West. Look, if you sleep on a mattress made of straw with a blanket your mother knitted for you and a pillow made of corn cob husks, when you fall asleep and you're sleeping on that bed, It's no different than a $2,000 mattress and a $500 pillow and a $400 duvet. Okay? Because you're not conscious of it. You're sleeping. When you sit down to talk to somebody, it doesn't matter whether it's a wooden chair you built yourself and just put a cushion down on for your buttocks, or whether it's a custom piece of furniture for $5,000 built by a famous furniture maker. Once you sit down and get over the awe of seeing the beautiful piece of furniture and you commence your conversation with the person you're going to talk with, you forget what you're sitting on. It may as well be the wooden chair your neighbor built for you with a little cushion. There's no difference. Okay? There's no difference in the food you eat except in the sensation or the taste. Okay? Nutritionally, it doesn't matter whether you're eating rice and beans with a little bit of salt or spinach pasta freshly made by some chef in LA at Spago's or something. It's just nutrition. But when we get consumed with all of these things, what happens is we're doing them for other people. So we are amplifying this stupid little thing we're supposed to be cutting out called the ego. We're actually amplifying it. Okay? And you do this over a few generations, and we've been doing it over a few generations now. You build in gratitude. Suddenly the insensitivity of Marie Antoinette makes sense. So the first world has definitely inherited this entitlement consciousness of the royals. Okay? And the average person in North America now, even if they're living low middle class or above, do you realize that you're living better than most royals did 200 or 300 years ago? I mean, it was a big chore to have a bath drawn up every day. Okay? To be able to go to the store and buy fine perfumes. Look at the selection of food you can get at a grocery store. Okay? Now ask yourself this. Could everybody in the world, all 8.2 billion people, live the same way? To what degree have the desires, tastes, and indulgences of the first world affected the emerging economies of the second and third world? You starting to get it? Ingratitude. And we take it everywhere we go. Okay? You want to know why I don't hang around with other expatriates in Costa Rica? Because they're disgusting. They don't mix with the locals. They don't live like the locals. When you're an immigrant, be an immigrant. Show gratitude that you've been allowed to live with the people. This country saved my life, literally, if I'm correct about what's going to happen in Canada and the United States. And I'm pretty sure I'm correct. So why shouldn't I have gratitude? I'll tell you what, I've always had gratitude. And it has to do with my upbringing and being thrown out onto the street at 16 and learning to live at that level and watching the way people suffer at that level. I've always had it. So the devil is the accountant. If the devil is responsible for this domain, if the physical earth is the province of the deity that we call Satan, then he has to govern. He has to act. And if certain people are abusing the privilege of being human, having a body which is for spiritual growth, then the devil has to act. And when the devil acts, you know what? Bad things happen. So, I think that's enough for tonight. I might have a bit more to say on this topic, so if I do, I'll do it again tomorrow. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.